Welcome back to our second lesson during the flu pandemic on the divided kingdom stage of Israel. Remember, after Solomon's death, the kingdom is divided into 12 tribes. The 12 tribes are divided to 10 tribes of the north and 2 tribes of the south. With the Levites being kicked out of office as the north, they all go down to the south to serve God there. It's a very troublesome time in the history of Israel. Troublesome because of the kings of the north especially. Became every single king, 12 different kings of the north, all were very wicked men, one right after the other. The line of Ahab's family just is a total mess. But we also see now we're at number 9, the 9th king. Remember our little chart. The key to understanding this is N9th means northern kingdom, the 9th king of the north. Jehoram. Jehoram is one of the sons of Ahab and Jezebel. His brother had just reigned as king. Now he's going to reign as king. He does this for 12 years. Not quite as bad as his father was, Ahab. Still a wicked man, but in comparison, he actually destroyed some of this, the sacred image stone that Ahab created. However, he did continue to worship idols. It wasn't like this was his way of just ending all idolatry. He just chose to end his father's image there of idolatry and began worshiping on his own. Now, if you remember the chart here we had a couple of weeks ago, the genealogy here of Ahab and Jezebel, they had, remember, 3 children. Ahaziah, on the last chart, I had to spell Joram, which is correct, but for the sake of this, it's important for us to see this spelling of Jehoram. Jehoram is the brother of Athaliah and the brother of Ahaziah. So his reign ended. Jehoram now is king. Athaliah is the queen. And remember, Athaliah is married to Jehoram, the descendant of Jehoshaphat, Asa, Jehoshaphat, and Jehoram. And so that's why when you're studying these passages here, you have to pay special attention to make sure that which Jehoram you're talking about. Are you talking about the northern king or the southern king who did reign at the same time? So it does somewhat make it difficult for us. That's why it's so important that we do, like I say, pay very close attention to this genealogy here. Well, Jehoram now and Elisha. Elisha here, this prophet ministered king by providing, giving provision as well as protection. Elisha provided water for the thirsty king's people in 2 Kings 3. On one occasion, he mobilized an army against Moab, who rebelled against him, persuading Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, and the king of Edom, to join him in the attack. Again, I don't understand the mentality of Jehoshaphat here. What we do is just have to take this for what it is. This is what happened. Why did he do what he did? Why did Jehoshaphat join up with the north? It's beyond me, and it should be beyond our way of thinking, that when we're in trouble, we join up with our enemies. However, oftentimes that's exactly what we do. We think that it's okay because we have one thing in common, but it's not. Elisha here, who'd been traveling unnoticed with the army, agreed to supernaturally provide water for all, but for the sake of Jehoshaphat. So God did allow the north to have the water, but see Elisha's reasoning here. Elisha provided food for the starving king and the people. The Syrians had surrounded Samaria at one point, causing a great famine within the city, where the conditions became so bad that it says that a donkey's head sold for approximately $50. If we try to put it over in our way of thinking today. A pint of dove's dung. Now, we're not really sure what this is. Some think that's literally dove's dung. And I guess it could be, but we do know this. This is, there's vegetation flourishes in Samaria. One of the common plants in the Greek vegetation area is Ornithalagum umbellatum, known in English as the Star of Bethlehem, and produces bulbs and bulbils that bear a fanciful resemblance to pigeon droppings. And, is this what it was? Which that's what the Arabs call it today. It may be. I don't know. Let's not get so much caught up in the exacts of what these things were worth. The point of this is that the conditions were very bad. And when conditions got very bad, I mean, they would pay outrageous fees, just like, you know, this society we're living in today in our country with the pandemic. There are no true shortages out there. However, people are hoarding up things, hoarding up food, or hoarding up toilet paper or paper towels or what have you. And so it makes people more willing to pay a little bit more for something when really it has no more value at all. So, you know, hard times make desperate people desperate in many ways. Jehoram here wrongly blamed Elisha for all that was going on, for the famine. As is often the case, when people do wrong, it's easier to blame somebody else for it. And so Jehoram thought to do this, and he vowed to kill Elisha because of this. Elisha didn't care. He trusted God, believed that God would take care of the situation. And he predicted that actually within 24 hours that there would be more than enough food, and so all this famine would quickly be over with. Elisha here was protected by God, or protected the king as well. The revelation by Elisha on several occasions during a war between Syria and Israel. Elisha here revealed to Jehoram, the ninth king of the north, through his visions here, but supernaturally revealed the battle plans against the enemy, and thus saving him from defeat. You know, Jehoram is not a godly man by any means, and yet God uses him for a particular purpose. And in fact, we know that all those in power, that God ordains those that are in power. Whether good kings or bad kings, God ordains them. And you know, David understood that. David understood, and Saul tried to kill him on many occasions. David knew he couldn't lay his hand against God's anointed, even though obviously David disagreed with what Saul was doing. And we have to understand that no matter what's going on in our society, God's still in control. And God could be using the good kings, or God could be using the bad kings for our benefit here. Here the refusal by Elisha. Upon learning of their problems, the Syrians attempted to arrest Elisha, but they were temporarily blinded by God. Elisha then led the sightless soldiers into Samaria, but refused Jehoram's request to kill them. All right, so Elisha here knew God's in control. The ninth king here in Naaman. Naaman is a character you may be somewhat familiar with. The story of Naaman and the leprosy. Very important story here of what took place. But here's the business about a captain, a Syrian commander here. Naaman, here is a Gentile from another nation, develops leprosy. And he goes to Jehoram, the king of the north, asking for help in this matter. Of course, Jehoram cannot help him, but he's told that there's someone in Israel who could, someone else. Well, he thinks Jehoram's the one in Israel that can help him, and come to find out that he's not. But upon reading the letter written to him by the king of Syria requesting healing, Jehoram tore his clothes, cried out, and it came to pass when the king of Israel had read the letter that he rent his clothes, said, "Am I God to kill and to make alive? That this man doth send me unto me to recover a man of his leprosy. Wherefore consider, I pray you, and see how he seeks a quarrel against me." So this guy's just trying to cause problems. He sent this guy down to be healed, knowing full well that I can't heal him. And if I can't heal him, then he's going to start a fight with me. And so he thinks he's being set up for this. But Naaman genuinely wants help. The prophet, though, it was so when Elisha, the man of God, heard that the king of Israel had rent his clothes, that he sent unto the king, saying, "Wherefore hast thou rent thy clothes? Let him come now to me, and he shall know that there is a prophet in Israel." And this is a great story here, to know that God here is revealing not only to Naaman, a Gentile Syrian, but he's revealing to the king of the north the power of God. And Elisha here says, "You send him down, I can take care of him." You know, there is a prophet in Israel. Kind of like David, when David went to fight Goliath. Remember why David fought Goliath? He wanted to show all the people, the Philistines and the Israelites, that there is a God in Israel. David wasn't trying to win the battle for recognition. He's trying to win the battle to show the true living God. Here Elisha is not wanting to heal so that he can prove that he can heal, but he wants to show them that there is a prophet, a true prophet of God, that God does speak through his people. And then Jehoram here and Jehu. Later we see Jehoram actually ends up wounded in battle. And when he's fighting against the Syrians, and he goes back to Jezreel to recover from his wounds. But there, though, Jehu, an army officer at the time, later be king, but an army officer, ends up killing him. And his body is then dumped on the field that once belonged to Naboth. Does that sound familiar? Naboth? That's the place, if you remember, that Ahab told that he would die at. He was wounded in battle. Remember, Ahab was wounded in battle, but he was actually later taken to the field, to Naboth's vineyard, where he died. Now his son is going to die at the exact same place there, under the command of God, and done by Jehu. And Jehu ends up killing a lot of people, assassinating a lot of people here. He ruled this for 28 years. God had ordered Elijah to anoint Jehu as king, and we don't know what happened. We see the scriptures tell us that God tells Elijah to do it. It ends up Elisha being the one. For some reason, Elisha actually ends up. Elijah did not anoint the body, but left it up to Elisha to perform this task and anoint him as king. I may have misspoken, I'm not sure. But to anoint him as king. And remember, Jehu was not a godly man, and yet God anoints him as king. And again, important to show that no matter who the power is, God is always the one behind that. God is always in control, no matter what we might think. We may not see it, but God is still in control. The prophecy here, Elisha, at his master's command, Elijah's command, carries out the actual anointing and predicts the following. Ahab's house would be destroyed by Jehu, and the wild dogs of Jezreel would eat the dead body of Jezebel. We looked at that earlier. His assassinations. Here's the type of person that Jehu was. I mean, he was very much a bloody man, a man of war. He killed Jehoram, the king of Israel. Remember, Jehoram is the son of Ahab, the king there. Killed Ahaziah, his brother. These two kings that were the two sons. Jehoram's brother-in-law. These two kings were the sons of individual kings. And Jehoram, the king of Ahab. Ahaziah here is the king, the son of Jehoram, the southern king, Athaliah's husband. Jezebel, wife of Ahab, I ordered her to be thrown from an upper window. And the 70 sons of Ahab, by ordering the people in the town to behead them, trying to wipe out the whole dynasty, the whole family of Ahab, so that none of the would have no descendants that would ever be able to rule the nation of Israel. Jehoahaz, now the 10th king of the north, he reigns for 17 years. For the most part, he was evil like the rest of the kings, and not as wicked as some, but it's still wicked people at this time. But God had compassion on him. Again, we see even though a wicked king, God uses him, and God even protects him. Here in this occasion, Jehoahaz did turn to God for help because they were suffering at the hands of the Syrians. His army reduced greatly down to 50 horsemen, 10 chariots, and 10,000 foot soldiers against a very, very mighty army. But God heard his cry and answered. Why? Because God still had a purpose for the nation of Israel. Even though they were divided this time, God had a purpose. Later, he would allow them to go into captivity, but God had a purpose. Part of it was because it's promised to Abraham and covenant, Isaac, Jacob, and said he wouldn't destroy them at this point, neither cast him from his presence as yet. He would cast them out of the land. But remember, even during the divided kingdom stage, when the first Jeroboam became king, remember what happened is that he got rid of all the Levites, took them all out of office, and appointed his own people of the lowest, it says, to be the priest. And so now the Levites are no longer the priesthood. When that happened, the scriptures tell us that the Levites would go down south to Judah, as well as people from all the tribes, all the believers that were in the northern kingdom at that time. So we can't assume that the 10 tribes of the north all were lost people, and the 2 tribes of the south all were saved people. In fact, we can assume that some of the northern kingdom was saved and some were lost. We can assume some of the southern kingdom was saved and some were lost. But we do know, the scripture tells us, that many of those inhabitants of the north moved to the south when Jeroboam first became king. So when people talk about the lost tribes of Israel, they're really not speaking biblically correct. When you think of the tribes, remember, as counties. And so the northern counties of Manasseh or Ephraim or Naphtali, or Asher, Zebulun, whatever the northern tribe county was. You had people of those tribes, counties, moved to the south. So during the divided kingdom stage, you had 12 tribes actually inhabiting the north in 10 counties, and you had the 12 tribes, some of the 12 tribes inhabiting the southern 2 counties. So in reality, there is no lost tribes. If all the northern kingdom was completely wiped out all at one time, and every single person died, the 12 tribes would still be there. They just would not be occupying their territory. So this misconception about the lost tribes of Israel, it just doesn't bear true in the scriptures. Because God promised the nation. And of course we know even in the New Testament it talks about people from the tribes, different tribes. James he's writing to the 12 tribes that are scattered abroad. So definitely all the people that were there and all were able to receive the book of James as he sent it out to the different tribes of Israel. Then Jehoash, the 12th king of the north here, we see that he ruled for 16 years, evil king. He was able to recapture some of the cities of the north that had been taken previously by Ben-Hadad, the king of Syria, and brought them back down at this point. Jehoash, we see the northern 12th king of Judah, and Amaziah, the southern northern 12th king of Israel, and then Amaziah, the southern 9th king of Judah. This is Athaliah and Jehoram's son, who is king at this time. And up to after his death, and Athaliah, his mother, would take over. Very wicked woman here. But the warning here to Amaziah. Joash felt that Amaziah was so inferior to him that he had no right to even try to come up against him. And when that was about to happen, when Amaziah challenges Jehoash, Joash writes a parable and sends it down to Amaziah. And in the parable, he's trying to show Amaziah how very significant that he thinks he is. And in the parable, he talks about a very insignificant thistle, how that it dared to suggest to a mighty oak tree, or mighty cedar tree, that its daughter be given to the thistle for marriage. And it's kind of a weird parable here, but you get the point here that and Jehoash believes he's so powerful, Amaziah has no right to even speak to him. And so he writes this parable and saying that it was folly, it was foolish for Amaziah to challenge, Amaziah being the thistle, to challenge the mighty cedar tree, being Jehoash, to battle. There's no way in the world that you could defeat me. Well, in this battle now against Jehoash, against Judah here, realizing his parable was unheeded, that Amaziah wasn't going to back off no matter what he said, Jehoash attacks and does defeat Amaziah. Captures Amaziah, breaks down a 600-foot section of the city walls of Jerusalem, takes gold, silver, precious articles from the temple, removes the treasures from the royal palace, even ends up taking hostages and returning them back to Samaria. And then the last king we'll look at this morning is Jeroboam the second. Now, I have the Roman numerals 2 there. Obviously, the scriptures don't say the second. But this is the 13th king of the north. There's Jeroboam, what we in theology we refer to Jeroboam the first, who was the very first king of the north, now 13th king of the north, a different Jeroboam, not the same family, not even the same tribe. Here becomes the king. And he actually reigns for quite a few years, 41 years. And again, like all northern kings, a very, very evil king. If you want to go to these passages, and I recommend that you do that, read through the passages here to see who these men were when they were appointed as such as king. Jeroboam has his run-in with different prophets, a true prophet and a false prophet. Here with the true prophets, Jeroboam was allowed by God to restore the boundaries of his kingdom that had previously been occupied by Israel's enemies. When the Syrians came down and took some, God allowed Jeroboam to rebuild the northern kingdom. Again, Jeroboam's a wicked king, but God allows this to take place. Reason was because of God's grace. God saw the affliction of Israel, that it was very bitter, for there was not any helper, it says, in Israel. And the Lord saved them by the hand of Jeroboam. So God can use saved or unsaved. God can use mighty men or what we might think of as weak people. God is always in control here. These two prophets also prophesied during the reign of Jeroboam. We see Hosea did, as well as Amos. And then the false prophet. Amaziah, a false prophet of Bethel. And again, these names can be very, very confusing because we're talking about a king named Amaziah. We have prophets named Amaziah. That's why, again, pay very close attention to the passages. And I would suggest in your Bible, and maybe take a highlighter and have a key somewhere to where you highlight all the northern kings, maybe in red, or all the southern kings in blue, or vice versa, whatever you want to do. And then all the prophets maybe in a different color, maybe yellow, or whatever it is. Just have something so that when you're reading through your Bible, you don't have to look up which king you're talking about. You can quickly identify them as a northern king or as a southern king. And in fact, you could even, when you highlight Amaziah or Jehoash or whatever, right beside them what king that he was of the north. You can highlight it in red, put 9th or 10th or whatever king you're highlighting in red. That should help you as you're studying, as you're reading through your Bible, to quickly remind you of which king it is that you're talking about. Amaziah, who was false prophet of Bethel, had complained to Jeroboam concerning the prophecies of Amos. And he falsely claimed that Amos said that Jeroboam, you're going to die by the sword. Now, God didn't tell him that. But he truthfully claimed that Amos predicted Israel would later be led into captivity. So he did tell the truth in one part. Of course, that isn't the marks of a false religion. Oftentimes they tell the truth in some ways and get you convinced that they're on your side. Speaking to a Jehovah's Witness not too long ago, and he says, we believe that Jesus is the Son of God. And he even said, Matthew 16, when Peter is talking to Jesus, who do men say that I am? And Peter's response was, you're the Son of God. He said, we believe that. Well, they do, in that they believe that he was a created being just like everybody else, though. That he was a son, like somebody else could be a son, rather than being the true, not just being the Son of God, but being God himself, the Trinity. So he's trying to trap me into saying that. But fortunately, I knew what passage he was talking about, and I went through it, didn't allow him to say anything, not trying to make him mad, but let him know, listen, yes, I believe he is the Son of God, but he's the Son of God in that he truly is God, that there is a Trinity. Whether we understand it or don't understand it, I don't fully understand it. I do believe it, but we need to make sure that the element of truth doesn't suck us into a false belief here. So Amaziah here lied about one part, told the truth about another part. And next week we'll begin with Zechariah, the 14th king of the north. And so we look forward to that lesson next week. Thank you so much.